Today I want to talk about mixing extreme metal drums. You know, blast beats, fast kick patterns, you know what I'm talking about. Which is not easy. But today I want to show you that if you know what you're doing, both during the recording process and during the mixdown, if you know what you are doing, you don't need millions of plugins, you don't need millions of samples, and you don't need to overprocess every track in order to make those drums sound big and fat, and in order to make them sound right in a dense metal mix. Today, I want to show you how I mixed one of the death metal productions here at KOHLE Studio. I'm going to walk you through every detail and every plugin of the drum mix, and hopefully you're going to learn something, and hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun together. Here we go. And today we're going to work on a song by a great Austrian-French death metal band called Monument of Misanthropy. And this is what the song sounds like. And this is what the final drums sound like soloed. Check it out. There's a link to the final mix of the song below. Check out the band, they are fantastic. So I mixed their latest album something like 1.5 years ago, and this is one of the songs. We tracked the drums here at KOHLE Studio. And the rest was recorded elsewhere. Then I reamped guitars and bass, and I mixed the album here in the studio. As you might know, I have my own academy called KOHLE Audio Cult, where I teach people how to record and mix and master all kinds of metal. If you are a member of that academy, you can even download all the multi-tracks of that song and mix the song yourself. And you can get a mix feedback from me, and you can watch a over 1 hour long video where I walk you through all the details, all the tracks, every single plugin of the original mix. So if you either want to mix that track yourself, or if you want to learn something about recording, mixing and mastering metal, check out the links to KOHLE Audio Cult below. But right now we want to talk about the drums. So let me walk you through the original drum mix of that song. Enjoy. So let's go through the processing we have here. Let's just start with the overheads and let's see what we got. Not much, just a low cut at 130, and then we're taking out some muddy whatever at 400 or 500. Remember, 500 hertz, the enemy of anything metal. No big deal. Let's have a look at the other cymbals. Basically something similar. Yeah, on those close mics, low cut, again, remove some boxy frequencies here, and then sometimes on the close mic I try to boost the main frequencies to make them cut through a little better. This is the China track. Let's bypass the EQ. This is a little dull. It will cut through a lot better. And I'm pretty sure I did the same thing everywhere. Oh, look at this. On the ride, I actually did a lot more. It's so important to make the ride like cut through in a dense death metal mix. So same thing here, low cut, boosting here. I even took out some of the very high frequencies, which is unusual. And then I used Devil Lock and L1 to make this one cut through. Let's just have a listen. That's without the processing. You can see that's very dynamic, and you can hardly hear the hits in between the bell. So I started with the EQ. Already better. Add Devil Lock. You know, this brings up the hits, the softer hits in between, and then finally L1 from Waves rounds it off, and that way we can get the right cymbal more in your face. So that's my cymbal processing. What do we have on the hi-hat? Okay, hi-hat, just a low cut, and I used Soothe. So you see, you know, there are some very high frequencies here. So this is 10K, 11K. That I was taming with Soothe. Then all those cymbals go to our cymbal group, which has a little automation, but not much. It's just like the last part gets a little more quiet. Now that slow part at the end of the song where he hits the cymbals really hard. So let's have a look at the cymbal group. Starting with Soothe one more time. Yeah, just taming a little bit of the harshness again. And now something very surprising. Look at this. I got a distortion on my cymbal bus. So this is very subtle, but this is like gluing things together a little more. So I'm just using the boost like so slightly. Interesting. Then we go into an EQ with another low cut, like a global low cut at 165 on all the cymbals. And finally, I'm using this tool just to make the stereo wideness a little smaller. I really like having like the guitars penned 100% left right, and here the cymbals are at 75%. So they're like wide, but not too wide. That's how I usually do it. Let's move on with the snare. Let's have a look at this. So this is our main snare track. We got 3 plugins here. Let's bypass them. First one is, and I always use this, is Drum Leveler. It's like an auto fader kind of thing, like somewhat in moving the fader, just trying to even out the volume of all the snare hits. Is so useful. I'm also using the sidechain filter here, so it's only reacting to the snare, and whenever the hits are orange, it's actually making them louder, and if the hits are loud enough, like in this example, it leaves them untouched. So this is a very, very helpful tool just to even out the snare volume. Next is FabFilter Pro MB, Dynamic Multiband Compression. And this looks like I'm trying to boost the presence, the attack of the snare, but only whenever the snare is being hit. So I don't want to boost the highs on the cymbal, just on the snare. Same thing for boxiness around 500, remember, 500. And this is the main punch of the snare. Gong, 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 gong. And this is like more punch, less honk, honk, and more attack. Awesome. What do we have here? A compressor. Not doing that much, and the attack is pretty slow. It's just, you know, it's just adding a little more attack. It's on the bus setting, which is my favorite for drums. It's like the FabFilter's take on the SSL compressor, and that's it. Then we have the other snare track, snare low. And as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of bottom snare mics. Still records, and this one actually sounds pretty good though. Only one EQ here, adding a little top end, and I guess this was a weird frequency. Around 500. Okay, together. Nice. Next thing I did, and I do this for every production, and there will be a course inside this academy showing you how I do this, is I create my own snare samples. I really do that for every production. So I recorded snare samples here with the drummer. And then I take some time, but I cut out like the best sounding snare samples. I do that for the left hand and for the right hand, or to have some variation. And I do that for the different velocity steps. So I usually end up with 5 or 6 different dynamic stages. And I do that for the close mics, for the overhead mics, and for the room mics. It's a lot of work. It takes you maybe 2 hours or something to set that up. But once you've done that, it is so cool and so convenient, because then you can trigger those samples. They will blend perfectly with your natural snare performance. And you have 3 faders, close mic, overhead, and room mic, where you can individually like add whatever's missing to your original snare. And in this example, I felt like the snare actually sounds pretty cool. Of course, you need some extra punch, so we need a little of the close mics. But for me, it was more important to give the snare a little more like wide feel and a little more roomy feel. If I boost the room mics, I will make all the cymbals louder and washy in the room. That's what you guys sometimes did, so I prefer to do that. And we can have a look. This is the sample alone. And this is the MIDI track. So you see I've got 2 different MIDI notes, like D1 and D sharp 1, triggering different samples. Here we can see my 3 main sample faders. So this is the close mic, overheads, and room. Let's see how much processing we have there. On the sample close mics, we only got this, adding a little more punch on the main fundamental. Look at this, another distortion plugin on the overheads. A touch of distortion again, just to bring them up a little bit more. Distortion is so helpful. And finally, on the room track, we got DF Comp from Drumforge. In the room setting, idiot proof. And we're boosting the highs a little bit. So let's blend the snare sample with the main snare track. Sounds like this. Nice. Now we can have a look at the snare group and what we see here. So this is where all, like both the samples and the acoustic tracks are going. Just a little EQ correction. And this is interesting. Another compressor with exactly the same settings, just to glue things together a little bit more. I think now it's time to also talk about reverb, because as you can hear, there's a lot of reverb on the snare. So the first one is something that I call Drumverb, which is a room preset in Altiverb. And most of the time I'm using this on the entire drum kit. We can have a look here. I think I'm not using it on the kick drum. Here you can see it is on the snare drum, it is on the toms, and then at least on the overheads I used it right here. And I think not on the close cymbals. So there's more of it on the snare and on the toms, and a touch of it also on the cymbals. But let's just solo the snare and let's turn that reverb on. Off. Or let's listen to the overheads. It just gives the whole drum set like a more roomy feel. Then we have another reverb called Snare Drumverb, and that is Little Plate from Soundtoys, which is a great sounding reverb with pretty much no parameters. It's important that you use the low cut here to get rid of a lot of rumble down there. I don't know how high it is, but pretty high. And it's set to 2 seconds, and this is giving me like a more dramatic reverb, and I think only on snare and toms. Let's just crank that for a second. And that's basically all the reverb I need. Let's have a look at the kick drum. I don't remember which samples I used. But I was totally free to choose whatever I want because we did not have a real kick drum in the room. So one sample is this. And this is Easy Drummer with Metal Machine. And here we have Superior Drummer, that's the other sample. With a fatter, less clicky, more roomy kick drum coming from, what is this? Is this the Mark Lewis thing, or it's in the Pool? I don't know. Or 2 Matson or something? It's the Darkness pack. So let's listen to those kick drums together. So the first one only has a slight boost at 90 Hertz. And you can look at this. We're even going to the drum verb slightly. All right, didn't know that. So we're also adding the kick drums to the main drum reverb. This is the second kick drum. And look at this, we're doing the opposite here. So here we're like taking down 230 a little bit. Then those two go to the kick drum group where we have a lot more extreme EQing. Let's have a listen. Okay, so I'm totally removing like the very high clicky, nasty, clicky, whatever shizzle up here. Boosting around 4 to make it sound maybe a little less metal clicky and a little more rock and roll. 200, like upper bass region is always dangerous for metal kicks. But this is something you have to do in the mix just to make it sit right in the mix. After that, we got another EQ doing the same thing again. Let's bypass both plugins. Yeah, just carving out some frequencies and adding some bite to make the kick sit right. That's all you need here, nothing more. Just you got to find the right samples to blend. So you got the right amount of click, the right amount of low end, and then I always use something different. And then you add like a final touch of EQ, make it sit right in the mix. Toms on each single tom. Ah, wow. Okay, I got deep leader. I've shown you deep leader in the drums foundations course, so you know what it's doing. Drum leveler again, like making sure all the hits are more balanced, like more compressed. FabFilter, EQ, not much. Removing the highs. You can usually cut a lot of the highs. That means you get rid of a lot of the cymbal bleed without affecting the toms too much. This is tom 1. I assume we have the same kind of processing on the other toms as well. Here I'm not using the bleeder on the second tom, I guess because there was less bleed. Same thing on the floor tom, and this one has a more extreme EQ setting. Where do we have the tom here? Yeah, more low end, taking out like the high frequencies, and 440. So, oh no, it's 470. So it's 500 again. Okay, so, and then I think we have a more dramatic processing on the tom group. You see, everything's going to the drum verb again, and on the tom group. And this is one plugin that I really love, an old plugin from TC Electronic that they have just re-released in a new version. This is the Finalizer plugin. It's called Master X. And it's so cool because you can EQ something with compression. So what I did here is I'm multiband compressing the whole thing, and I'm limiting it and I'm maximizing it to push the toms in your face. But at the same time, I'm using the compression to get rid of some of the boxy mids here. Wow, huh? This sounds blub, 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 blub. And now? Louder, more present, more punchy, and you get rid of all those boxy 500 shitty frequencies that you don't want. Yeah, and it's also compressing things and limiting things so the toms are more in your face. Then we got an EQ doing pretty much the same thing again. Cutting out some 400, adding some bite up here, and a low cut, so especially the floor tom is not pushing too much energy into our mix down there. And finally, let's check out the room microphones. Remove all the processing, they sound like this. First plugin is Devil from Soundtoys, one of my 3 go-to extreme compression plugins. Bypassed. Crushing it, like bringing up the more quiet information. Then we have another EQ, and this is something I do very often. I'm cutting the highs because I don't want to have too much cymbal information in my drum room. So if you focus on the drum shells, when I engage the EQ, you will see that the sound of the drum shells is not changed that much, but you really remove a lot of the cymbal information from the room track. Nice, and I don't think they're very loud. -11. Awesome, let's have a look at the main drum bus. So everything is going here. This is what the drums sound like. So we got a dynamic EQ coming from Ozone from Isotope. Tightening around 400 again. So half of the drum mix is fighting 400 and 500 hertz, okay? Okay, so this tightens that the boxy mid-range again. We've got another EQ doing the same thing one more time, and a low cut at 23 hertz on the entire drum bus. And finally, we got a clipper flatline doing quite a lot. Just making the drums louder and more in your face without changing the overall tone. Then we got to go into the SSL mixer. The drums are just coming here on my first channel, and then they're going to a drum group where I have an SSL EQ on the drums, doing the same thing again. Adding some highs, removing some 400, 500 something, and then they're actually going into my hardware SSL clone compressor. Drums are still soloed, so you can see what the compressor is doing. Eight dB of compression looks like a lot, but with the auto release setting, it's maybe just 4 dB or something. And the other 4 dB are like constantly compressing. But then again, which means that if the drums get really silent, you get another 4 dB, like boosting the more quiet, the really quiet stuff, like single cymbal hits or something like that. That was the drum sound. Let's move on. All right, everybody, let me know how you like the video. Let me know how you like that drum tone. I felt like it's a good compromise between sounding kind of natural, but still like modern and punchy enough, but not too faked or not too much like samples, if you know what I mean. I can still hear the drummer play. I still feel like this is the big rock sound in a big room. You know what I mean? And then not something tiny that just sounds like MIDI notes and programmed drums or something. But let me know your opinion. But if you want to get your hands on that track and mix the entire track yourself, not only the drums, but all the tracks, check out the link to KOHLE Audio Cult. If you're a member, if you subscribe to the Academy, you can download the files, the multi-tracks right away, and you can watch a 1 hour long video where I explain everything about that mix. But that's not all. We got like tons and tons of courses. If you want to learn something about recording drums, there are like 2 or 3 great courses in there right now. If you want to learn how to dial in guitar tones, if you want to learn how to master modern metal, if you want to learn how to whatever, there are tons of courses, and we're adding courses pretty much every week, every month. And it's not only me. I'm just the main mentor, but we have monthly preachers every month. We have like ERMIN HAMIDOVIC right now and Bob Marlette, and we got Jens Bogren coming up and some other cool people I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So check out KOHLE Audio Kult if you want to learn more. If you don't want to learn more, just go somewhere else. That's fine as well. And yeah, check out the YouTube channel as well. There are like a bunch of videos on this channel where I talk about drum sounds that might be interesting to you. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I always forget to say that. If you like the videos, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel, ring the ding dong bell, so you keep, how do you say that? You are informed about any future videos from my side. That's all for today. I hope to see you inside KOHLE Audio Kult, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.